Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming in a new Elden Ring build video. Today we're talking about being a dragon caster, because breath attacks like Agheel's Decay, one of the all-powerfuls, and all of the different types that we have, they are now in this patch of 1.09 working much better. Thanks to basically the most broken talisman finally working slightly better in this patch, the raw medallion is actually boosting the power of breath attacks, giving us an extra 5% damage in PvP and about 10% in PvE, which is pretty major. There are also the previous buffs and fixes to the Grey Yoll's raw version, which is hitting really hard now, and the fun of these silly fist weapons where we can deal lots of very quick attacks and damage, or blast with this fire, which can deal big damage if used right up and under a target. This playstyle is allowing us to deal a lot of damage from really far away, whether it's the great rot damage over time, the burst of the fire or magic or other elements, the massive damage debuff of the raw, or just going to town on someone with the fist weapons and being very effective with just that. It's a nice versatile, unique playstyle. Being caster focused in PvP is something I've not done much of, so it's been very fun to try. Let me show you how it works on that side of things. When it comes to a dragon caster playstyle in PvP, it's going to come down to your ability to create and abuse the space you make to get those very powerful breath attacks off or raw when you can off in time before being interrupted. Since you don't have hyper armor, it's pretty vital you catch people out and maximize those opportunities. If you successfully land these, slow to cast attacks, you will put them massively on the back foot because the damage is huge. The most damage we can do is via the breath attacks though. Very important that you have both seals equipped in both hands when you do that, maximizing the potential damage. When using any of the breath attacks though, you want to lock on and go to town, holding and channeling out the insanely long range, wide-reaching pressure they create. But then, free aim the following channel as they're likely to run or try to roll and dodge to the side of the original. That way you can make them run into the following channel, which usually catches and destroys people. Though some people will just straight blind rush to you in a straight line, so that's an easy auto-lock spam cast opportunity. If they manage to dodge the first cast, they'll try to trade with you, and if you do land your cast into a trade, usually you come out on top because of the big rot damage. It doesn't actually matter which type of breath you use, it'll all hit mega hard and work mostly the same way, but I'm using the Scarlet Rot breath options because that generates a lot of pressure with the Scarlet Rot if that ever triggers, and if it does trigger it means you've already hit them a few times, they're very low, and then the rot will probably finish them off. We can also make use of the incantation Darkness, which is a way to obscure the casts, giving you the potential to surprise them with the cast, but because they can hear it, it doesn't always work. But overall, the damage of the breath is massive if you can get the channel going and hit them for even 2 ticks or more. On the other hand, the other main incantation we use is Grey Yoll's Raw, working as a surprise closer range cast. The range is solid though, landing from somewhat of a medium range, and if it lands, it'll deal like 800 or more in one hit, which is pretty solid, and then debuff them, which will help the duel from there. The debuff means they'll deal about 15% less damage in PvP while affected, so that's very nice. And I tried to use this to trick people. They're expecting, say, another slow breath attack, but then a quicker raw comes out, which has a bit more armor than a breath attack, so we can use it as a trade and probably finish them off in the duel. It definitely works better to use the raw than a breath attack when someone's rushing you, trying to prevent you from doing that longer cast. But of course, the other end of this build is the fist weapons, the Grafted Dragons. We use these fist weapons for melee pressure, mostly as a tool to create space or finish with the quick attacks. We're not committing points to increasing the melee damage, so we're not relying on these too much. But whether it's the fist running power stance attacks or the standing combo, we can build a lot of damage with these things, even though we're more of a spellcaster. The attacks come out really quickly from a standstill, which is great for catching people on rolls or trade pressure. The standing combo can be very strong if you can get multiple hits off, like I did in this standing trade, and you can see even with no points spent into this, it's pretty scary. The fist weapon type isn't ideal though. It does have small range and very low poise damage, and was hit by a nerf in 1.09 to lower the poise damage of heavy running attacks, which are pretty good. Still, the Grafted Dragons work as a way to create space to then be able to cast again or finish off low health enemies with the mega fast attack speed. Finally though, the last thing I should mention is the Ash, bear witness of the Grafted Dragons. Unfortunately, in PvP, the damage is very low if not used at point blank. Technically, if you do land it in trade, like point blank like a shotgun, it will hit them for a good 1k or more, but that's very unlikely to happen. If you use it at any range, it'll basically create fire on the ground that ticks damage as they stand in it, which is nice pressure, maybe forcing them into a trade or damage them a bit over time, but it's certainly more of a useful Ash in PvE, so let's talk about that side of things. When it comes to PvE, we have long range burst potential thanks to the breath incantations. We can kind of use whatever breath is best for the fight, whatever the boss is likely to be weak to. Probably a bad idea to use fire against a fire enemy or frost against a frost enemy basically. Overall, it's hard to go wrong with rot though to start with, and then swap to a higher raw damage after the rot's triggered. Having said that, with this build, we do boost fire damage specifically from the physic and the talismans we have, so fire breath is generally the best option if it will work. And we can use these breath attacks into the target from very, very far away. Great for open world boss fights or the opening of any boss fight normally. Then as soon as we can't get a cast off because they're too close to us, we can swap to the fists and go from there. The Grafted Dragon Ash, bear witness, is a lot more effective here in PvE, where we consistently use it up close and point blank without issue. It also has a bit of high poise armor, meaning it's likely to land even in trade, and it'll deal roughly 1.5k damage per use, which is not bad for the burst itself, and then of course all the fire on the ground is going to do further ticks of damage. Meanwhile, the fists themselves, we benefit from that super fast running and standing combos, letting us burst enemies down, and especially those weak to fire damage. Much like any power stance fist combo, it's a lot of attacks very quickly. Even in short punish windows, you get a few off. It might even be worth considering getting some successive attack build in there, if you want to go more melee focused than being a caster style dragon warrior as we are. The damage on the fist weapons is going to be fine though, even with these lower points in that build. But overall, the build allows for a nice mix of, well, really long range bursts and DPS with incredible damage build up once you get the rot going. In PvE, we're also benefiting from the wondrous physic, which in our case gives us a brilliant 8 seconds of no FP cost on anything we do, meaning we can easily get multiple full breath attacks off at the start of a fight, which is a major burst of damage to begin things with, and often it'll kill many bosses just that. Definitely a unique playstyle for PvE, and one that I really enjoyed using. It feels very strong as long as you know when to use things, of course. But now it's time for us to explain the build, because there's actually a couple to talk about. There's the PvE version and the PvP version. No matter what you're doing, you're going to be using 2 grafted dragons, of course, but we're actually just reaching the bare minimum to use these. We're not actually committing to stats for this. The main damage obviously comes from our communal seals and the spells or incants that we're going to be using from those. For the PvE build, we are running as much poised armor on theme as we can get, with the malformed dragon armor, the twin gauntlets, and then the dragon greaves. We wear heavier armor for PvP. The all-important raw medallion is equipped, actually enhancing our breath attacks and raws as it should do now, and as we are using incantations, of course we're using the Flux Canvas Talisman. The next 2 slots are PvE or PvP specifics. For PvE, we don't care about damage negation, so raising our fire attack with the Fire Scorpion Charm's good, and opening the fight with as much damage as possible while full health with the Ritual Sword Talisman, that's great too. When it comes to PvP though, we're going to want a lot of poise to allow for trading, so the Great Jar's Arsenal is going to allow us to wear heavier armor, and that's how we're able to wear the full malformed set, and then we just run the Bold Goat's Talisman to give us even more poise for the trading. For the Flask of Wondrous Physic, we're running the fire boosting option, and of course the thing that gives us the 8 seconds of no FP consumption, which is really nice. For our self buffers, of course we're running the Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow combo as always, and these are the options I usually run for the different raws and breath attacks. Ezeek's Decay, Agheel's Flame, these are going to give you the most damage and rot build-up, and then Greyol's Raw, of course, is what we're doing to get the burst of damage at medium range and debuff the enemies. As mentioned, you can use the other breath attacks based on what you're fighting and what it's going to be weak to, but since we do have fire boosting options in this build, the flame is always going to be the best option ideally. These are our stats though. 60 vigor for PvP, you can go lower for PvE, 26 mind or higher to have enough FP to work with. We can only fit 15 endurance, 20 strength and 14 dex allow us to use the fist weapons, just barely. 28 faith is what's allowing us to use all the incantations we have, and then you run as much arcane as you can get away with. I'm only able to reach 57 here, but if I drop my vigor down, I could reach even higher. But there you have it, there is our dragon caster build. Let me know what you think. There's quite a lot of options when it comes to the different dragon incantations. There were a few that we just didn't use in this build, like Dragon Maw or the Claw, but I do think it's a bit overwhelming to have too many options when you could just be using something that's very powerful and straightforward. We could easily come back though, make a different version of this, or work it into other builds, because they're doing very good damage at this point. So if you haven't tried any dragon incantations out on 1.09, definitely recommend it. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.